Hello and welcome to the show. Now, I have rather been enjoying Ride 6, I have got to say, and while I have been a little bit ill and my voice hasn't been very good, I was coming up with some video ideas and some challenge ideas, and, well, I got a little bit curious. You see, I am not particularly experienced with bikes. While I have been enjoying Ride 6, I don't really know what I'm doing, so what I've decided to do is get the very fastest bike that I have access to. Now, I wanted to use the Kawasaki, is it the Ninja H2R or something, but I haven't got it unlocked yet in the game. So I found the next fastest thing that I could go to, which is a Ducati. I think it's a Pingale V4, something like that, I don't know. It's an incredibly fast racing bike. And then I was going to turn off all of the assists. Absolutely everything. No traction control, no ABS, no anti-wheelie, none of that, no combined brakes or anything, manual gears, the whole lot. As you can see, immediately did a wheelie, and then immediately had an accident going into turn 1 because I was going to see how fast a relative novice when it comes to bikes could lap the Nurburgring with the craziest bike in the most difficult configuration. I said most difficult. I actually don't know what the MotoGP bikes use, if they have any sort of assists on them or not, but there are no assists going on in this one. So I set off and I gave myself, I think about 40 minutes to practice, and then I was going to have one lap. Just one lap, no redos on the time trial, and see how quickly I could, go around the circuit, and then do a similar thing but with cars, and see where I'm by no means I'm no expert at Nurburgring in the slightest, but I'm of course much more comfortable and much more familiar driving cars in video games than bikes, and yeah, it was. Well, for me at least, it was going to be an interesting piece of science, and hopefully for you, the audience at home. So we set off. As I said, I have been playing a fair bit of Ride 6, so it's not going in completely with zero knowledge, if you like. But I haven't been playing Ride 6, with bikes like this very often, and certainly not without, with none of the assists and everything, which makes things very, you can see, makes things very difficult. It's very easy to have tremendous accidents around here. It doesn't take much, and just running a little bit, pretty much running a tiny bit wide, you're going to crash. You'll occasionally get away with going on the grass, but not all the time. Big wheelies was something else that I was having to deal with quite a lot. Funnily enough, now, I don't know how much power this bike has, it doesn't say, as we again touch the grass and go for a cartwheel down the road. The game doesn't actually tell you how much power this bike has. My guess would be somewhere around the region of 300-ish horsepower. It is, as you would imagine, very quick. It likes to do a lot of wheelies, so trying to keep that one in check. This is the sort of first lap. I got a bit better with it as time goes on. I did vaguely remember some advice, I think from a while ago on bike games, you can use the rear brake to try and get it to stop wheeling. I did need to learn that you can't get away with even thinking about touching the grass around the circuit. That was something that was very easy to do. I mean, you're used to it with a car. If you run a tiny bit wide, you put a wheel on the dirt in the car. It doesn't matter. I mean, Nurburgring, there's very little runoff area for a lot of it. But, with a car, it doesn't matter. The other thing that I did struggle with, so no racing line, I wouldn't really allow that one on with this, but getting the braking right proved to be its own challenge. You have to brake a fair bit earlier than you think with the vehicle. I am presuming there's a couple of factors. I mean, first of all, there is simply less rubber on the road for slowing the thing down. I'm also guessing you're just going a damn sight fast. The bikes accelerate very quickly, and you're going very fast into corners that I might not be used to going as fast into. Here was another example. This was a corner that was an easy one to get wrong. I mean, that one there, admittedly, I fell over before I hit the wall, but whether I fell over or not, I was going to go and visit the wall on that one. So yeah, getting the braking point right was something that was certainly a challenge in this. This hairpin in particular was another one that I just carried way too much speed into a bunch of times. That one there was, yeah, not a great one. It was, I'd say that hairpin was probably one of the more difficult corners to get. I ended up just having to be cautious, and that was the point of this challenge. By removing all the assists, there was an element of had to be a little bit cautious while I was trying to learn and figure things out. But yeah, stopping the bike from wheeling was something important. Although you could get away with like a little wheelie wasn't going to instantly end in a crash. Touching the grass often ended in a crash, and missing your braking points is going to end in a crash whether you're on a bike or in a car. But yeah, that was that was the bit that got away. There, I got across the. If you already got the bike like stood up, you might get away with going across the grass. If you're leant over a fair bit and touch the grass, that's when you're going to have a bad time, pretty much. The other thing you've got to be aware of is sliding. Now, the bike being like a race bike and on slicks, well, we wobble it into the first corner and fall over regardless. But the bike being on slicks meant oversteer wasn't as much of a problem. Now, that's not to say that it couldn't get you. It certainly could on this one. But in general, it was more likely to wheelie than get a big oversteer moment. You have to be being, I say, really egregiously stupid. That being said, if you did get an oversteer moment, unlike what I'm used to with a car, the chances are, if you get a little bit too greedy on the throttle, that happens. And it's only a tiny amount too greedy on the throttle. Like with a car, the back end will slide out, that's fine. You'll lose some lap time, sure, but you're not going to have a massive accident necessarily. So that was something I need to be careful, and then just don't hit the curbs like a moron. It wasn't a great 20 seconds for the rider on that one, but you get the idea. So the 40 minutes went by. I had to go and take my shot at doing the lap. Now I will say it did immediately invalidate the lap, and I'm not sure I could have done anything different on this one. I just put it on the grass. I think it was off the road. I couldn't take control of it in time. So that was invalidated from the get-go. I don't really care. It's not really that I'm not trying to go over actual overall leaderboard times here. This one was, for my own personal little investigation. But it will say invalidated lap. Nothing I can do about that. Getting the first section right all the way through here was, I say, nerve-wracking. It's a difficult one. It's a high pressure lap at the end of the day for this challenge. It just don't want to fall off. You'll lose a bunch of time doing that, but also want to go as quickly as possible. By this time, I had got a little bit more comfortable. You see how close I got to the dirt and how close I got to trouble there. I was a little bit more confident. I made a big error through here. I actually was going a bit too slow. Well, I turned in too much. Could have gone a lot faster through there. And I know there's a lot of places. If you know bikes, you will possibly be watching this, and you will be aware. I am aware this bike is capable of going way, way faster around this track. This is what I could do. I say safely. This is as fast as I could go without having a massive accident. At least that was the hope. But we get it slowed down in time, which is always important. We can unleash the power of the bike and try and stop it from doing a wheelie as we go through this one. Very good fun, I'm not going to lie. It was very good. It was most definitely a big challenge getting it around here, but I did very much enjoy my time trying to get around here as quick as I could. I did have a little adventure, just turned in slightly too soon through that section. Getting the weight transfer as you're trying to change direction on the bike is one of the biggest differences that, even still, I'm not exactly that used to. It's almost like the vehicle is much slower responding in some ways to changes of direction. You've got to plan, you've got to prepare a lot better in this one, as again, I got myself in a couple of bits of strife, which, not ideal, quite risky, could have very easily fallen off the bike had it gone wrong. Now, for this part of the video, I've cut down the lap, don't worry, you'll see the whole thing in full. There's no cheating from me in this one. We come around these sort of final couple of corners. Again, you see the bike, it does desperately want to be wheeling around the place. I'm, quite careful with the throttle. Now, heading onto the long straight, of course, the bike is going to be very fast in a straight line. Now, that is great. I actually get it a little bit wrong for coming on the straight. First of all, could not get it to stop wheeling. It really, really wanted to wheelie the whole way down here. But we did manage to stop it without having a crash. I actually ran a little bit too wide coming onto the straight, and I think trying to compensate, ending up a bit wide, then made me a bit too aggressive with the throttle. But you see the difficulty, the struggles in making sure that the whole thing behaved itself. I was a bit worried about this corner. It's a very fast corner. Probably slowed down a bit too much going through there. Again, A lot of this lap, yes, it could absolutely be taken faster, but this is the speed that I could do essentially without falling off. But still, it was a relatively clean lap. There's a couple of little adventures on the grass, and the AI took me across the grass at the start, but that was going to be my lap time. It was, well, it doesn't show it on the screen for us, unfortunately, but it was a 7:26.254. Now, that is a pretty quick lap time around Nurburgring, especially for someone who's not really used to bikes. This is about as savage a bike as you can sort of get. So, we move on to cars. Now for this portion, we would be on to Forza Motorsport. Now, I have not played Forza Motorsport in a good few months, and as I said, I know the Nurburgring. I'm far away from being an expert on this one, but I was going to set this up to give each car, one lap, as I am much more experienced with these, and see what I could do. Now, we're going to start with the baseline. In reality, would a full-on race bike be faster than a GTE car around here? This is the Ferrari 488. I actually don't know. I'm going to work on the assumption it probably would be. It'd be a damn sight scarier on the bike than the car, but either way, this was being used purely as a benchmark. This was a vehicle that I figured I should definitely be going faster around this track with. So we just send it off and see what sort of time I could muster. And it was, in some ways, a good warm-up for me, having not played this game or driven this game for a while. It was a good test, and sure enough, by the time we come barreling down the end of the straight, had it been the perfect lap? Absolutely not. Is there a lot more speed in this car? I'm sure there is. But it was a clean lap. I was able to push the car a lot more comfortable manner, and as we run up across the line, it was a sub 7-minute lap, which I was relatively happy with. Also, I beat Ewan, which was also good. But, you know, okay, the Ferrari race car, sure, it is faster around here than the bike. Absolutely no big surprise with this one. Makes sense that it would be with my combination of experience and everything. Absolutely no surprise whatsoever. So, the Ferrari, sub 7-minute lap time. Now we move on to road cars, because this is probably a more interesting comparison. Now there was one caveat to this. Of course, the race bike is on full slick tyres. For this challenge, I modified. The road cars are completely stock, bar they were allowed to also get slick tyres. We start off with a Porsche. We have the 911 GT3 RS. This is the 2019 one, I believe. Okay, it's not as fast as the Ferrari. Still a pretty damn good car. There is no doubt about it. Power to weight ratio will be nowhere near that of the bike, but it is a pretty easy car to drive quickly around here. Again, it was not my best lap I've ever driven around this one. There was more pace in the car. It was a little bit scruffy. However, 7:20 for the Porsche was enough to also see it clear of the race bike. Again, this was my second lap around the Nurburgring in a good few months on Forza. I was likewise relatively happy with said performance. We move next, so we're gradually getting slower in terms of the base car, if you will, and while we're still being modified with slick tyres to be somewhat vaguely comparable, yeah, we go to a Lamborghini Gallardo. This is the Superleggera, of course, very much like this car, very cool car. Forza does have a tendency to overrate all-wheel drive cars. You know, it takes the launch into consideration for the stats, which is all very well and good, but for this test, that's irrelevant. So while the PI on this is probably a little bit higher than its overall performance often would be, it's not the easiest of the cars to get around here. It's a little bit understeery. Now, it works for me. It gives me some consistency and some, as I say, relatively safe. I've talked about it before, the way I like my vehicles to drive is with a bit of understeer first. It allows me to push them better in general. Yeah, it was not not quite the perfect lap. I was still overdriving in a couple of places, perhaps underdriving in some others where I didn't quite know. Now, the Lamborghini, pretty fast in a straight line, is helpful. We saw the bike getting around the 200 plus an hour mark around here, so the car being able to get up towards that as well is important. The all-wheel drive in this, the traction, with the slick tyres and the cars I'm driving, the traction is rarely an issue, so the all-wheel drive isn't really helping the Lambo that much. It's still quick though. Again, not quite as fast as the Porsche, probably what I was expecting to see, a 721.5 for the Gallardo, so that does also go quicker than the bike. Up next, I went for a Ferrari 430 Scuderia. This was lovely to drive, actually. I really quite enjoyed driving this one. It was also helping slightly in that I was getting more and more familiar with Forza as we went along. Now you will see that it's saying that I am on lap 2. It isn't actually my second lap. What I did for the sake of speediness, if you will, as I drove the car forward off the line at the rivals mode, did the skip lap option that just teleports you basically to give you a flying lap. So I could just go straight into a flying lap with the cars. So yeah, I had not driven the if I'd actually buy the 430 Scuderia for this video. I'd never driven it on Forza Motorsport before, but it was pretty good. In fact, this lap I was very happy with. It was a lovely clean lap around the Nurburgring here. No big problems for the Ferrari whatsoever. And I say clean lap, it was actually a clean lap as well. I didn't even dip a wheel on the grass or anything in this, as we would accelerate towards the line, and it was an even better lap. 718.5 for the Ferrari. Lovely fun to drive around here. As I said, yes, the car is on slick tyres. If it was not on slick tyres, it would not be beating the Ducati. But I felt like it was only fair for some semblance of balance in this little test to have these vehicles running on the slicks. I then opted to have a go with a Lexus LFA, because why not? Again, a car, I think I have driven it occasionally, but not very much on this game. Another one, stuck the slick tyres on. By this point, for those curious, the cars are now starting to sit in low S-Class. So, you know, fast road car section, as you would expect, but yeah, it was a low S-Class. The LFA blast around the final corner, relatively good lap for the LFA as well. And again, at this point, I was getting more and more familiar. While this car is technically slower, or rated slower than the GT3 RS, I did beat the lap time. That was down to, I suspect, getting more familiar, remembering the game and more familiar with everything that I was doing. So that sort of tier of supercars, a great selection of supercars, were able to beat the bike, which meant we had to go a little bit slower, and I opted to go for a Porsche Cayman GT4. Still a very quick car, of course, but now we've dropped down into A-Class, towards the top of A-Class, but you know, still down into A-Class. You can feel the difference in this one. It's not as fast down the straight as, let's say, the Lamborghini, for example. It hasn't quite got the grip of the GT3 RS. It is definitely a slower vehicle than the others. Well, as capable as it is not as fast as the others, which was going to definitely make this a challenge. Now, this was the very first lap that I ran with the car, was a little bit scruffy. It certainly wasn't perfect, as you can see on the time. The time was getting away from it at this point. One of the things I didn't notice, this car was not a massive fan of the curbs. It was having issues bouncing over this one. It was unhappy getting across some of the bigger curbs as we head around the very final corner. It wasn't going to be beating the bike. Now, I have no doubt a better driver than me could get this car around the Nurburgring in 7 minutes 26 in its stock guys plus race tyres. I had a couple of goes and I got a bit more time sort of off the vehicle, but ultimately I couldn't. I didn't think I could do it, certainly not without an awful lot of runs, and yeah, I didn't quite have the time or energy for that one. So instead, what I opted to do was a couple of light modifications. Those modifications were, first of all, a race gearbox. Now, I drive with manual and clutch on here, and was for the tests, things like the 430 Scuderia and so on. I was having to use the clutch button to change gear, which does slow down the shifts ever so slightly, and over the course of a lap at Nurburgring, well, that does end up equating to quite a lot. So that was one of the times lost by putting a race gearbox in. Don't have to worry about the clutch. You've got seamless shifts, if you will. The other upgrade I did was maximum size tyre widths. So still on the race tyres, they're as bigger a tyres as we could get, which I say is a relatively realistic upgrade for the Cayman. So I set about trying to do some laps. As you can see from the best lap time previously to the one that we are on here at the moment, got it down to a 7:28. It actually got it very close indeed. However, on the next lap we got tantalizingly close, but I couldn't quite do it. 7:26.4 was the lap time. It was within a few tenths, so naturally we had to try again, and I really wanted to try and get this. Now, what I have got here is a side-by-side comparison of the two laps between the bike and the Cayman. I went the next lap I went with the Cayman. Now, there are a couple of things interesting to note. First of all, trying to sync these up is a little bit difficult, but the start line for the lap is slightly different between the two games. The start line on Ride is further back than the one on Forza. That's okay, you still got to go around the same distance at the end of the day. It was just a curious thing to note as we head through this first section. You can see the bike is ever so slightly ahead. The bike has got far superior acceleration. The thing is, I can just be a lot more brave with the Porsche. I trust what the Porsche is going to do because I have experience dealing with the car. I know I know how the car's going to react, I know how the car's driving the games. The bike you'll see me here as we head up towards this next corner. I'm very fast, I'm at the corner way quicker than with the Porsche, but I can brake later with the Porsche and I can carry more speed. As I said, I did make a mistake through here on the bike, I'm well aware of that one, on this lap, but you can see there's a lot more commitment when chucking the Cayman through here. Now, another big thing that I noticed between the two games is the size of the curves. The bike will be gaining time on these straights. I'll go back to the curves in a minute. But you can see the bike will massively gain on the Cayman when it comes to acceleration. And then, I mean, it's not too bad through a lot of these corners, naturally. But yeah, the bike will out-accelerate the Cayman massively, and then there will come a sequence of corners where I can just be a lot braver with the Porsche. Down here, for example, I can keep the Porsche pinned and brake later up at the top, and that acceleration, that time gained under acceleration is lost just from being able to chuck the Porsche. And again, like the Porsche is essentially caught up once more as we head through this next section. However, the bike will get on the throttle. Yeah, what I was going to say, differences between the two games. At the end of the day, these are two games, and trying to compare cross games is always a little bit janky. Still gets the point across, but the curbs are a big difference. In fact, on Ride, the curbs around Nurburgring are very, very flat. Curbs on Forza are vicious. Now, I don't know what one is more realistic. Here, I don't know. I believe, at least from the footage you see of Nurburgring, I feel like Nurburgring has got some pretty harsh curves. I think Ride has been a bit kind and sort of flattened them off a bit to make it slightly more tolerable for riding around on a bike. But you can see as you go through here, the curves on Forza are far more vicious than they are on Ride. Now, you see I got the hairpin right this time around. The Porsche was a long way back, but you come to the braking zone for these. Basically, the corners that I wasn't so sure with on the bike are where quite a lot of the time gets lost. It's still, though, remarkably close between the pair of them as we head up the hill here. In fact, pretty much on top of each other. The bike with a big wheelie is a little bit of a problem because, again, you've got to lift off the throttle or try and slow it down somehow. Get the vehicle under control. The bike has pulled slightly, and we're only talking very slightly ahead of the Cayman as you head through this next section. Mid-corner speed there actually pretty similar between the pair of them, though it is pretty similar between the pair of them. The Porsche looks like it's absolutely on the limit, and the bike looks like it's being driven by someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing, is the best way to sum it up. But again, like down here, got to be a little bit careful. Well, I was being a little bit careful on the bike. This is completely flat out in the Porsche. There's not really even a thought about it. I'm not worrying about lifting, as you can see I am with the bike. The bike is ahead because it's got up to its 150 mile an hour faster. But then we sort of slow down for this next section. The Porsche carries way more speed through here. I was just so much more confident in the Cayman's abilities in this section that I wasn't going to have enough. And again, we're flat through there with the Cayman, and you can't quite do the same in the with the bike, but the bike can still make up its time somewhere. You see how quick it'll get to 100 plus miles an hour down towards the carousel. In fact, the Porsche barely even gets to it before it's got to jump on the brakes for the carousel. Again, the carousel also looks rather flat in ride in comparison to Forza. Again, I'm going to hazard a guess to make it slightly more tolerable for the for the bikes, essentially, as we head up the hill through this next kind of twisting section. The bikers are going to be able to pull a little bit of a lead, although now we get into the really fiddly part of the lap. I like this section of the Nurburgring down here. You can, if you get it right, it's a lovely flowing section, and with the Cayman, I was getting things fairly well through here. It's a lot smoother with the Porsche. In fact, you see I've managed to eke out a little bit of lead despite the bike's acceleration. I mean, I ran a little bit wide onto the dirt with the Porsche through there. Yeah, again, it is just able to be committed through these corners. That is where the lap time is coming from. That's the point of this challenge. The bike was. I mean, I would occasionally find an apex and occasionally find a racing line. I mean, I tried my best. I did, considering the complete lack of experience and the, intentionally difficult combination of factors. Yeah, I didn't do too badly with the bike. This section here is another one where you'll notice the big differences in sort of speed and commitment. This is where the car's really starting to extend its lead, and that was kind of to be expected. Under acceleration, that Ducati is going to win every day of the week. But down this part here, like, I'm absolutely sending the Porsche. In fact, the Cayman was not enjoying the bumps at all. I was having issues. I don't know whether the Cayman's sort of stock suspension setup, but it was not happy with the bumps down some of the sections, which did make it a little bit uncomfortable. And by this point, yeah, the Cayman has started to eke out its lead. I made the most of, even with it bouncing around horribly, and I was a little bit scared I was going to have a big accident because of that, I had managed to eke out that lead. It wasn't a great heading onto the straight for the Ducati. I know that. It was for the Porsche. Can get on the power nice and early with the Cayman. The bike, I had big issues trying to just stop the damn thing from wheeling, and that has cost it some time in all of this. That being said, let's not forget that bike is seriously fast, and this is a long straight, as you can see on the speedos of the respective vehicle. The bike is doing 200 plus miles an hour. The Cayman can do about 170, and that does involve a little bit of downhill to sort of help it a smidge. The thing is, though, while the bike has caught up and repassed the Cayman, this section I just wasn't able to be as brave. We're about 20 miles an hour slower through that corner than I could be with the Porsche, and again, into this twisty part, I just don't trust myself on the bike. I'm just not as good getting it turned through here, and all of that time the bike had made up down the straight, it will then lose in the twisty bits. As we head through the final corner, you can see the Porsche has gone and done it. I got the Porsche ahead, and it was across the line, and it ended up being a 7:24.3. I wanted to beat the bike. I wanted to beat the bike. I would have been fine with a couple of tenths. It was quite a good run from the Cayman. So here are the lap times at the end of the day. These are the vehicles that we did manage to beat the bike with. The Ferrari GTE car, sure, managed to get sub 7 minutes with that one. 430 Scuderia was very good fun to drive. I enjoyed that one immensely ahead of the LFA. The Porsche was the first road car I took around here. I'm sure there is more speed, and as I said, I'm sure that the stock Cayman could probably do what a good driver could probably do that lap time that I did with the bike in that stock Cayman, because I am certainly no Nurburgring expert, if you will. But yeah. That's I can beat the Ducati with a Cayman GT4. I took a little bit of tweaking in this one. Look, at the end of the day, is this the most scientific of experiments? I say not really. Look, they're two different games. They've got two slight different interpretations of the Nurburgring, if you will. Yeah, does it really mean anything? Not particularly. Is it an interesting challenge? Very much so, at least it was for me, and I hope you found it interesting as well. Because I was curious as what sort of car it took to match my lap time with a Ducati. So yeah, Cayman GT4. I don't think much slower than that Cayman you're going to struggle, unless if you are building purpose-built cars for the Nurburgring. I could probably get like a mid-A class car to match that Ducati. I was using stock road cars for this test, purpose-built one, you would customize it slightly differently, and yeah, probably get a little bit more out of the game's PI system if you wanted to. But yeah, much slower base car than that Cayman as a stock vehicle. You're probably not going to do much with. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this immensely. It's been a while since I've done one of these investigation type videos, and it was very good fun. Yeah, I'm not very good with bikes, but I did have a lot of fun trying to be slightly less bad with them. I think it's the best way to sum it up. But there we go. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.